My sister posted a perfect Christmas photo. Everyone was in my cabin except me. I commented the truth. 3 minutes later, the post disappeared. 61 calls, 14 voicemails. Christmas morning is supposed to feel warm, right? It is supposed to smell like cinnamon and pine needles, to sound like soft laughter in another room, to feel like family gathering close. Because that is what families are supposed to do. But for me, Christmas had started to feel less like warmth and more like frostbite. Cold, creeping, quiet at first, and then impossible to ignore. I am 36 now, and I have spent most of my adult life pretending that being excluded did not sting. I told myself it was fine. I told myself I was mature enough to understand. I told myself family ties were complicated, not cruel. But the truth was that those ties had never really held me. They had only tightened around me whenever someone needed something. My name is Riley. I am the oldest of 3 siblings. First there was me, then my sister Tessa, who is 33, and then our younger brother Sean, who is 29. Growing up, I was the quiet one. Not exactly shy, just quiet in the way a kid becomes quiet when everyone has already decided what role they are supposed to play. I was the one expected to understand. When Tessa threw tantrums, I was told to be patient. When Sean failed a class or crashed Dad's car, or somehow managed to turn every bad choice into a family emergency, I was told not to be too hard on him. He's still figuring things out, Riley. That was the soundtrack of my childhood. You are the responsible one. You are the easy one. You are the one we do not have to worry about. At some point, those words stopped feeling like praise and started sounding like dismissal. I left home at 18 for college and never really moved back. I worked hard, harder than most people ever saw, built my own tech company, and after nearly burning myself out, by 30, I sold it for more money than I will probably ever need. I kept that part quiet. No big announcements, no luxury car showing up in my parents' driveway, no dramatic family toast where I revealed some life-changing number. That was never me. I still drive a 10-year-old Subaru. I still wear clothes until they fade. I never once told my family that technically I am a multimillionaire. It was not because I wanted to test them or set some trap. It was because I knew, deep down, that money would change the way they looked at me, and not in a good way. Tessa, on the other hand, has always cared about optics. She lives for Instagram stories of candid family brunches where everyone somehow happens to be wearing coordinated outfits. She documents her life like she is pitching a Hallmark movie. Carefully curated smiles, seasonal throw pillows, matching pajamas, little captions about gratitude and blessings posted over photos she had staged 20 times before choosing the right one. She is married to Mark, who is just as obsessed with appearances, and they have 2 kids, Ashton, who is 6, and Everly, who is 4. Tessa calls them her miracles and insists the rest of us refer to them as the littles, which honestly makes my skin crawl a little every time I hear it. Sean just floats. That is the best way I can describe him. One month he is selling real estate, the next he is doing landscape design, the next he is launching a podcast about mindful masculinity that disappears after 3 episodes. He has always had charm though. That easy, disarming way of making everyone feel like they are the most important person in the room. It worked on my parents. It still does if I'm being honest. Our parents, Joyce and Daniel, are complicated. My mother is the kind of woman who calls herself brutally honest when what she really means is that she wants permission to be rude. My father is quieter, but no less passive-aggressive. They mean well, or at least they have convinced themselves they do. But over the years, their accidental slights began to feel very intentional. Like when they forgot to tell me about Sean's engagement party, then insisted they thought I would not be able to make it anyway. Or when I gifted them a trip to Napa for their anniversary, and they spent the entire time posting photos captioned, "Thanks to our wonderful Tessa for organizing this," as if I did not exist. But this Christmas was different. I had been living in Seattle for the past 5 years, but last summer I bought a cabin just outside Denver. It had big windows, a roaring fireplace, and enough room for everyone to gather comfortably. I thought, maybe foolishly, that it could become the start of something new. A fresh tradition, a place where we could all show up without all the old tension, or at least pretend long enough to build something better. Back in September, I offered it to the family as a possible Christmas spot. I even emailed pictures: the fireplace, the kitchen, the snow-covered deck, the guest rooms. No one responded. Then, in November, Mom casually mentioned that Tessa had offered to host Christmas that year. It just makes more sense, with the kids, she said, like that ended the conversation. I nodded and told her I understood. But deep down, something cracked. I had offered to host. I had already decorated the damn cabin. I had blocked off the entire week in my calendar. But once again, my gesture had been treated like an afterthought. Still, I told myself it was fine. I could spend Christmas alone. Maybe I could invite a few friends over, go snowshoeing, start a tradition that did not require people who only remembered me when it was convenient. I tried not to take it personally. I even shipped gifts to Tessa's house for the kids, wrapped and labeled "No Drama," just so Ashton and Everly would know I had not disappeared. Then Christmas morning came. I was drinking coffee in front of the fire, watching snow drift down outside the window, when my phone buzzed with a notification. Tessa had tagged me in a photo on Instagram. The caption read, "Christmas morning with the whole fam. So blessed." I stared at it for a full minute before I opened it. Then I tapped the notification, and there they were. My parents, Tessa, Mark, Sean, the kids, even my Aunt Marlene, who I had not seen in years. They were all sitting around a massive fireplace I knew far too well, because it was mine. They were in my cabin. Every single one of them. I had not given them the code. I had not told them it was available. I had never said they could use it, but somehow they had let themselves in, made themselves at home, and then posted about it like it was a normal family gathering, like I was the absent one, like they were the whole family and I was just some optional detail. I zoomed in on the photo. My throw pillows, my rug. The mug in my dad's hand had a chip on the rim from where I had dropped it the month before. This was not a coincidence. This was deliberate. The rage came slowly, like a pot being brought to a boil. First disbelief, then humiliation, then something deeper, betrayal. I scrolled through the rest of Tessa's post, dozens of photos, the kids opening gifts under my tree, Mom and Tessa baking cookies in my kitchen, Sean raising one of my limited edition whiskey glasses in a cheers gesture. Not one text, not one call. Not a single mention that they were using my space. I almost threw my phone across the room. Instead, I took one slow breath, opened the comments, and typed, "Love this. Just FYI the cabin you're in. I own it. Tenants move in January 3rd. Then I hit send. 3 minutes later, the post vanished. The silence that followed was deafening. Then my phone started buzzing. 61 calls in the span of an hour. 14 voicemails from my parents, from Tessa, from Sean, even from Mark. Texts rolled in like hailstones. "Riley, can we talk? Why would you do that? Don't ruin this for the kids." It was just a misunderstanding. But was it? I stood there staring at the fire while my phone vibrated on the kitchen counter. And for the first time in a very long time, I did not feel guilty. I felt awake. And that was the moment I decided I was not letting this go. Not this time. For the first few hours, I ignored the calls. I turned my phone face down, let the buzzing become background noise, and tried to calm the storm building inside my chest. But when the voicemails started piling up, 14 by the end of the day, I knew I had to listen. Not because I wanted to make peace, but because I needed to know exactly how deep the betrayal went. The first voicemail was from my mother. Her voice was syrupy sweet, but laced with that familiar edge I knew too well. "Riley, honey, I think there has been a huge misunderstanding. We thought you weren't coming, and Tessa said it would be fine to use the cabin. You never said you were using it, and it's not like we trashed anything. Please don't overreact. Call me." The second voicemail was from my father. His voice was low and stiff. "Riley, this isn't the way to handle things. Family talks these things through. Don't make this about ownership. Call us back." Then came Tessa. "Oh my God, Riley. Seriously? You're really going to put tenants in the cabin over Christmas without warning? You blindsided us. Everyone's upset, especially the kids. Ashton cried. Everly asked why Uncle Riley was being mean. I don't know what's gotten into you, but this is so selfish." That one almost made me laugh. I was being selfish for reclaiming my own space after they had snuck into it, hosted a holiday gathering, and plastered it across social media like it was some family fairy tale I had been too cold-hearted to join. Sean's voicemail was short. "Bro, I don't know what the hell that comment was about, but you need to chill. You weren't even coming. Nobody thought you cared. Don't burn bridges over this, man. It's Christmas. That voicemail was when the simmer turned into a boil. I had been chill my entire life. I had let things slide. I had swallowed the hurt. I had laughed off slights like they were just family quirks. But this was not an oversight. This was not a scheduling mix-up. This was my entire family deciding I did not matter. Not enough to invite, not enough to ask, not even enough to inform. And then they called me selfish. I did not respond that day or the next. I packed up a few things and drove back to Seattle 2 days early. When I arrived, there was a large envelope waiting in my mailbox. Certified mail from a real estate agency. Confused, I opened it. Inside was a lease agreement for the cabin, signed by Tessa. The tenant name had been filled out as Tessa Reynolds. Lease term, 1 year. Start date, December 15th. My hands started shaking. Attached to it was a note from the leasing agent. Thank you for finalizing this. We received the signed lease and key copies from your sister last week. We're excited to move forward with the property management partnership. Please let us know when you'd like the direct deposit information for rental income. Rental income partnership. I stared at the documents for a long time, my mind reeling. Tessa had posed as me. She had contacted the agency I had casually mentioned months earlier when I was exploring whether I should rent the cabin during ski season. She had given them the access code. She had keys made. She had even filled out paperwork using my name. The lease was technically void because it did not have my real signature, but the boldness of it stunned me. She had planned this. The whole family gathering at my cabin was not a spontaneous Christmas miracle. It was orchestrated, and they had never planned to tell me. I drove straight to my lawyer's office the next morning. Rebecca had been my real estate attorney for years. Calm, no nonsense, and fiercely competent. When I showed her the lease, she whistled softly. "This is borderline fraud," she said, flipping through the pages. "Definitely impersonation. She is lucky the agency didn't wire funds yet, or she would be in even deeper." I did not know what to say. I just sat there, gripping the edge of the chair like the ground was shifting beneath me. Rebecca leaned forward and said, "Riley, I know this is family, but you need to decide how far you're willing to go. We can stop this, but it might get ugly." Ugly. That word echoed in my head all day, because things were already ugly. They had been ugly for years. This was just the first time I could not pretend otherwise. I did not call my sister. I did not confront her. I wanted to hear it from her lips. I wanted to see if she would lie to my face. So when Mom called again, her fourth call that day, I picked up. "Hi," I said flatly. "Oh, honey," she breathed, like we were on the brink of reconciliation. "I'm so glad you answered. I've been worried sick." "Really?" I asked. "Because it seems like you've all been having a great time." There was a pause. "It wasn't personal, Riley. You're always so busy." And Tessa she had this whole thing planned. "Planned?" I asked, my voice tightening. "So you knew it was my cabin?" Another pause. "Well, yes, but she said you weren't using it, and she thought it would be nice for everyone." "She also signed a lease," I said. Silence. "She what?" my mother whispered. "She submitted a forged lease to a rental agency," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "Using my name, my address. She gave them keys codes, access to a property I own." "That can't be right," Mom said. "Tessa wouldn't." "She did." More silence. Then, "Well, maybe she thought you changed your mind. You never said you'd be using it." "I never said you could use it," I snapped, "let alone lease it out." "Do you realize how insane this is?" She huffed. "You're blowing this out of proportion, Riley. It's family. Sometimes we do things informally." "Forging my name is not informal, Mom. It's illegal." She clicked her tongue. "Why are you being so harsh? It's Christmas." There it was again, that old guilt. But it did not work this time. "Because you all made a choice," I said. "You chose to go behind my back. You chose to erase me. So don't talk to me about Christmas." Then I hung up. That was the last time I spoke to her that week. 3 days later, Sean showed up in Seattle. I opened the door to find him standing there with a sheepish grin on his face, hands shoved into the pockets of a too expensive leather jacket. "Bro," he said, "let's talk." I did not move. "How did you know where I live, Tessa?" he said without blinking. "She said you'd cool off by now." I stepped aside, not because I wanted to forgive him, but because I needed answers. We sat in my living room. I did not offer him a drink. Sean looked around and said, "This place is nice. Didn't realize you were doing this well." That rankled. "I keep my business private." "Yeah," he said, clearly. There was a long pause before he finally said, "I didn't know about the lease, I swear. I thought you were letting her use the place." "And you didn't think it was weird that I wasn't there?" I asked. "That I hadn't posted, called, or shown up?" He shrugged. "I figured you were doing your solo thing again. You're hard to read, man." I did not respond. Sean leaned forward. "Look, I get it. It was messed up. But you know how Tessa is. She thinks everything is hers by default. Always has." "She crossed the line." "I know," he said, quickly. "And she knows. But if you press charges or sue or something, Mom is going to have a meltdown. Dad, too. You're going to nuke the family over this." "They already nuked it," I said. He rubbed his jaw. "So what now?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but I'm not sweeping this under the rug." He left soon after. He did not argue. He did not apologize again either. Later that night, I got a text from Tessa. "Sean told me you're being serious about this. Riley, you wouldn't actually ruin our family over a cabin. You've always had a flair for dramatics, but this is too far. Let it go." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed one sentence and hit send. "I've let a lot go, Tessa, but not this." And that was when everything started to unravel. The fallout was not loud. It did not come crashing down like in the movies. No dramatic confrontations in the rain, no tables flipped at family dinners. It was quieter than that, and somehow more suffocating, like the slow spread of cold air under a door, the kind of silence that hums in the background and makes your skin itch. For the next few weeks, the family group chat went dark. Not that I expected applause for finally standing up for myself, but the synchronized silence was jarring. Nobody said a word. Not even the passive-aggressive "hope everyone's doing well" messages that usually followed arguments. It was like I had been carved out neatly like fat from meat. Still technically there, but not wanted. January rolled in fast, and the Denver cabin echoed with the sound of movers. I flew back for 2 days to oversee the transition. Boxes, signatures, walkthroughs, keys handed off to the new tenants. I changed the door codes, updated the listing with the management agency under my name only, and removed every backup key. I locked everything down, literally and figuratively. And yet, the place felt hollow. Not because I missed them, but because I realized, maybe for the first time in my adult life, that the version of family I had been chasing did not exist. Not really. It had always been an illusion. Fragile. Scripted. Photoshopped into existence by people who smiled wide for the holiday card and then cut you out of the picture the moment your presence became inconvenient. I sat alone in the cabin that night, the last night before the tenants moved in, on the floor, wrapped in a throw blanket, drinking tea that tasted like paper. The furniture had been cleaned. The decorations were boxed. It did not feel like mine anymore, and oddly, that made it easier to let go. I realized I did not want that place to become some shrine to forgiveness. I did not want it to sit empty, waiting for a family that would never knock. So, I stopped waiting. The next few months were quiet, but they were not empty. I threw myself into work, not out of escapism, but out of purpose. I had been toying with an idea for months, something tech-adjacent but more personal. A mentorship platform for young entrepreneurs who did not come from flashy backgrounds or elite universities. People like me, quiet builders, overlooked minds, the ones expected to understand while everyone else got the spotlight. I started sketching it out, slowly, methodically, late nights, early mornings, whiteboards, and wireframes. I did not tell anyone. I did not need applause this time. There is something strange about working in silence, after years of trying to be heard. At first, it is disorienting. You wonder if you are disappearing. But then, it becomes power. You start doing things for yourself. Not for validation, not to prove a point, just because they matter to you. I built a skeleton team, 2 designers, 1 back-end engineer, and 1 community lead, all of them freelancers I had worked with before. We called it Foundry because it was about building, shaping, and forging something real. At night, I just walked around my neighborhood in Seattle. No headphones, no distractions. I needed to learn how to be alone without feeling punished. I started noticing things I had not seen in years. The uneven sidewalk near the corner bakery, the old man with the blue cap who always nodded at me, the cat that seemed to own the entire block. The world had been there all along. I had just been looking somewhere else. I also started therapy, not because of the cabin, not because of Tessa, but because I realized I had been carrying too much for too long and calling it strength. My therapist Mara was gentle and thoughtful. In the first few sessions, she asked very little, just enough to let me empty out the clutter. Memories of being skipped over, dismissed, used. One Thursday, she said, "You said something interesting last week. You said, 'I'm the one who never needed anything.' Do you think that was true?"
I shrugged. I think it's what they wanted to believe. She nodded slowly. "And what did you want?" It was such a simple question, but I did not have an answer.
I started journaling after that. Not every day, just when things felt like too much. I wrote down everything I had never said aloud. How I had always hated being the easy child. How it was not actually easy to be quiet. How it hurt to buy gifts no one remembered, to send messages no one replied to show up and still be invisible. I wrote about the cabin. I wrote about Christmas. I wrote about the night I saw that Instagram post and how the silence afterward had felt louder than any argument we had ever had. And slowly, so slowly, I started feeling something strange. Not peace exactly, but clarity. I realized I did not miss them. I missed the idea of them. The family I had built in my head. The one that cared. The one that called. The one that showed up without being asked. That family did not exist. Maybe it never had. And grieving it like a death felt oddly healing. One night in February, I got a message from Mark Tessa's husband. "Hey man, I know things are tense. Just wanted you to know I had no idea about the lease stuff. That was all Tessa. We didn't mean to hurt you." I stared at the message for a long time. There was no apology, just a quiet attempt to absolve himself of responsibility. I did not reply. 2 days later, I got a call from a Denver number I did not recognize. I let it go to voicemail. "Hi, Riley. This is Kathy from Snowview Elementary. I'm calling because Everly listed you as an emergency contact on her school file. There's no issue, just a clerical update, but we wanted to confirm if that information is still accurate." I blinked at the phone. I had not even been told I was listed. They had put me down as a backup without asking. Still useful, apparently. I did not call the school back. I forwarded the voicemail to Tessa with one line: "Remove me from the school contact list immediately." No response, of course. Foundry launched in April. Soft launch. Invite only. We rolled it out to a small group of college graduates and solopreneurs, many from underserved communities, first-generation students, people building quiet businesses out of dorm rooms and kitchens. We did not go viral. We did not need to. But people wrote to us. Long messages full of gratitude and relief. Finally, something built for people like me. I saved every email. I printed a few. I framed one. I did not tell anyone in my family. They would not have asked anyway. One night in May, Sean messaged me again. No greeting, just a screenshot of a family Facebook post. My parents had posted photos from a Mother's Day brunch. Tessa, her kids, my parents, balloons, cake, captions about blessings. I was not in it. I was not mentioned. Again. Under the image, Sean had written, "You really done with them?" I stared at it for a while. Then I typed back, "I think they've been done with me for a long time. I'm just catching up." He did not reply. That summer, I went back to the cabin. Not to stay, just to check in, handle seasonal maintenance, and make sure everything was running smoothly. The tenants were out for the weekend. It was quiet there. Still. I walked the old trails I used to hike as a kid. I saw my breath in the morning mist. I listened to the way the trees did not ask anything from me. On the way out, I stopped at a small gift shop by the lake. A carved wooden sign caught my eye. It read, "Family isn't who you come from. It's who stands with you when you stop trying to earn it." I bought it and hung it in the entryway of my apartment. The next time my phone rang with a family name, I let it ring out. I did not even flinch, because I was not falling anymore. I was climbing, and I was starting to like the view. The funny thing about clarity is that once it clicks into place, you start seeing patterns that were there all along. Little things I used to excuse became impossible to ignore. Mom's backhanded comments, Tessa's snide jokes wrapped in just teasing, Sean's disappearances whenever things became inconvenient. They no longer looked like isolated slips. They looked like a blueprint, a carefully balanced system where I had played a role, the background character, the reliable one, the one who would not make a fuss. As long as I stayed in that role, everything ran smoothly for them. But now I was out of frame, and they did not know what to do. By early June, I was in a different place entirely. Emotionally, mentally, even physically. I had moved to a new condo near Pike Place Market. Exposed brick, wide windows, a view of the water if you tilted your head just right. It was not extravagant, but it was mine. No shared keys, no forced smiles, no group photos where I was invited only if someone remembered. Just peace. I also took the time to revisit some legal matters. The cabin, for example. After the forged lease incident, I updated the ownership records so everything routed through a holding company I quietly set up called Lurwood Ventures. My name was no longer public on the title. Property taxes, utilities, contracts, everything pointed to Lurwood. If anyone went snooping, they would hit a wall. Just an LLC in a chain of other shells. Why? Because I wanted to see if Tessa would try something again. And I had a feeling she would. My instincts were proven right in late July, when I got an email from the property manager. Hi Riley, just wanted to confirm something strange. A woman named Tess Reynolds emailed asking to regain management access to the cabin. She claimed to be the owner and sent a fake utility bill as proof. Thought you should know. I stared at the email. So she was still trying, still clinging to the illusion that if she could convince someone, anyone, that she had a right to my things, I would eventually fold. But I was not folding anymore. I replied, "Thank you for flagging this. Please forward me the email and attach a copy to the incident log. I'll handle the rest." Then I reached out to Rebecca, my attorney, and we drafted a cease and desist letter. Not just for Tessa, but for all of them. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how deep the entitlement ran. It was not just the cabin. It was the dozens of little things that had stacked up over the years. The phone plans I had been paying for since college. The credit card I had once co-signed for Sean that was still being used. The shared Netflix account where I was still footing the bill despite not being welcome at Christmas. I wanted all of it cut. So I sat down with a spreadsheet in front of me and started tallying, not just money, but patterns, connections. Every way I had been made into the fallback plan, the silent donor, the emotional janitor cleaning up after everyone else's mess. By the end of that week, I had a list and a plan. It started with quiet disentanglement. First, I froze the shared credit card and sent Sean a courtesy email. This card is being deactivated. Any balances are your responsibility going forward. Please don't contact me about payment. I won't be covering it. Second, I pulled the plug on the shared family streaming accounts. Netflix, Hulu, Spotify, even the Ring account I had once set up for Mom and Dad's house when they could not figure out how to install their own system. Third, I removed myself from every emergency contact list I could find. Schools, doctors, even the vet for Tessa's dog. Yes, somehow I had ended up listed there too. Fourth, I filed paperwork to formalize Lurwood Ventures as the official owner of all three of my properties, the cabin, my condo, and a small duplex I had quietly bought as a side investment. All trust managed, all ironclad. But it was not just about cutting them off. I wanted them to understand. So I did something I had not done in years. I invited them to lunch. All of them. A quiet restaurant downtown, one of those wood-paneled places with linen napkins and waiters who do not write anything down. I booked a private room, just in case voices were raised or truths were finally heard. Tessa arrived first, of course, right on time, and already flustered. She wore her polished mom uniform, soft beige cardigan, gold pendant necklace, oversized sunglasses resting on her head like a crown. She looked around like she owned the place and barely acknowledged me when I stood to greet her. Then came Sean 10 minutes late, smelling faintly of cologne and carelessness. Finally, my parents arrived. My mother in pearls and pastel lipstick. My father, quiet and unreadable as always. We sat. No one ordered. They waited for me to speak. I did not rush. I let the silence stretch just long enough to become heavy. Then I folded my hands and said I wanted to say something once, just once, and I wanted all of you to hear it at the same time. Tessa rolled her eyes. Riley, if this is about the cabin again, it's not just about the cabin, I said evenly. It's about everything. They stared at me. I continued. For years, I let things slide. I paid. I showed up. I didn't complain. I thought that was what family meant. But now I realize it was just permission. Permission for all of you to keep taking and pretending it was normal. My mother frowned. That's not fair. No, I said. What's not fair is being excluded from Christmas in my own home. What's not fair is being called selfish for reacting to fraud. What's not fair is being treated like a backup generator no one wants until the lights go out. Sean shifted uncomfortably. Tessa crossed her arms. I pulled out a small folder and slid it across the table. Inside was a printed breakdown of everything I had deactivated, transferred, removed, or closed. It was not dramatic, just facts. These are the accounts I've shut down, the cards I've closed, the utilities I've transferred. Going forward, I am not your fallback, I am not your sponsor, and I am not your scapegoat. Tessa scoffed. Is this revenge, some power trip? No, I said. This is freedom, yours and mine. My father finally spoke. Son, this seems a little drastic. I met his eyes. No, Dad. What was drastic was forging my name. What was drastic was cutting me out of holidays and then acting shocked when I did not want to fund the next one. They did not apologize. I did not expect them to. I paid the bill without another word and left. I never expected that conversation to change them, but I needed it. Not for closure, for clarity. And that clarity gave me momentum. Foundry hit its stride that summer. We brought in new mentors, self-made business owners and investors who had built wealth without Ivy League degrees or flashy venture capital deals. We partnered with local colleges and startup incubators. We launched a podcast. I gave a few interviews, anonymously at first, then eventually by name. One of them ended up in a business newsletter Tessa subscribed to. She did not reach out. But 2 weeks later, I got a LinkedIn connection request from Mark. No message, just a silent bridge-building gesture. I did not accept. Not yet. Because I was not done building something of my own, something they could not take credit for, something they could not hijack or twist into a photo op, something that was not a cabin, or a family brunch, or a birthday dinner where no one remembered my name. This was mine. And the best part was that they had no idea what was coming next. Revenge, I have come to realize, does not always need to look like fire. It does not have to be loud, cruel, or wrapped in petty theatrics. The most satisfying revenge is quiet and surgical, the kind that does not demand applause, but leaves no room for denial. And in the end, mine was not just about payback. It was about putting a period at the end of a sentence they had never let me finish. By September, Foundry had grown from a small mentorship circle into something bigger. We had attracted the attention of a few angel investors, not because I was chasing money, I had enough, but because they believed in what we were doing. We were not just helping new entrepreneurs. We were teaching them how to navigate a system that had ignored people like us for too long. We were showing them how to build something with no family name, no rich uncle, and no safety net. In the middle of all that growth, something almost poetic happened. I got a call from a nonprofit organization I had worked with before. They focused on small business grants for single parents, mostly women, often overlooked. They were losing funding, and a mutual contact said they were looking for someone to quietly step in, help restructure the board, and offer operational support. No fanfare, just someone who knew how to rebuild. I asked for the board list. Tessa's name was on it. Apparently, she had been on the board for 2 years. A community face, they called her. She helped with social media, fundraising events, donor dinners, mostly surface-level things, but she was good at playing the polished advocate, the empowered mompreneur aesthetic. I asked for a meeting quietly. The executive director, Dana, met me for coffee. I explained who I was. I told her about Foundry. I did not bring up Tessa at all. Dana, it turned out, had heard of our platform. She smiled wide. We've been trying to build something similar in-house, she said, but we don't have the tech or the staff. I offered to help. I asked for no salary, no title, just a consulting agreement that would give me access to the organization's operational structure. A foot in the door. She said yes. And just like that, I stepped into my sister's world. Not as her brother, as the person she had never seen coming.
Over the next 6 weeks, I worked quietly. I reviewed budgets, I optimized workflows, I hosted a virtual workshop on funding strategies that drew more attendance than any of their previous donor dinners. Dana was thrilled. So was the board. They offered me a formal seat. I accepted. Tessa still did not know I was involved. We were ships passing in adjacent inboxes. She still thought I was just that tech guy in Seattle. Then came the Grant Gala. Annual event, big venue, open bar, silent auction, all the right hashtags. I was invited as a board member. So was she. I did not RSVP. Instead, I asked Dana for a favor. I offered to sponsor the event anonymously. Full venue rental, catering, AV. No name on the banners, no speeches, just one small request. I wanted to handle the donor appreciation video. She agreed. I called in a favor from a videographer friend. We gathered footage from mentees at Foundry. Testimonials. Stories. People who had built side hustles into storefronts. People who had paid rent from their first freelance gigs. People who no longer had to choose between daycare and chasing a dream. I narrated it myself. Calm, simple, no bragging, just truths. At the end of the video, the screen faded to black. Then white text appeared. This event was made possible by a silent investor, someone who believes in second chances even when others only remember the first mistake. The room was dead quiet when it ended. I know because Dana told me. Tessa was at the front table. She clapped politely. Then Dana stood up and gave her speech. She thanked the board. She thanked the mentors. And then casually she said, "We are especially grateful to our new operations advisor, Riley, whose platform Foundry is now an official partner and whose generosity made tonight possible." Tessa's face, Dana later told me, turned to stone. I had not just shown up. I had built something under her nose and lifted the very community she claimed to champion. Without her help, without her approval, without ever asking for a seat at her curated table. She did not come over that night. She did not text. But 2 days later, she resigned from the board. No explanation, no farewell post, just gone. And that was when the ripple started. Once people realized she was not involved in Foundry and never had been, they started asking questions, especially some of the nonprofit's top donors. One of them reached out to me directly. "We always assumed you two were partners," she said. She always implied. I smiled and replied, "She implies a lot of things." The next time I heard from Tessa, it was not a message. It was a podcast. One of those lifestyle shows where she was a guest. The episode was about overcoming toxic family dynamics. She told a neat little story about being betrayed by a sibling who used his success to sabotage her community work. She never said my name. She did not have to. But I did not respond because I did not need to. While she recorded her curated narrative, I was closing a partnership deal with a university incubator that would give Foundry access to 1,200 students annually. Real people, real change. Sean reached out again in November. This time, it was different. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me," he wrote, "but I just wanted to say I think I get it now, what it feels like to be left out. Things have been weird. Mom and Dad barely talk to me unless they need something. Tessa is freezing me out. It sucks." I stared at his message for a long time. Then I replied, "I'm not happy that you're hurting, but I am glad you're starting to see it." He did not reply for a while. Then another message came through. "Can we talk sometime? Just us." I said yes, because not all bridges need to be burned. Some just need new architects. As for my parents, the silence stretched into winter. No calls, no cards, not even a passive-aggressive Facebook tag. And yet, I felt lighter than I ever had. I celebrated the holidays with a few close friends, the ones who had become my chosen family. We cooked, we laughed, I hosted them in my condo. And for the first time in years, I did not feel the need to check my phone for obligatory family messages, because none were coming.
And I was finally okay with that. Then, on Christmas morning, my phone buzzed. Not with a call, but with a photo. A text from Sean. He and his girlfriend, someone new, someone warm, were smiling in front of a tiny tree, holding mugs with "Starting Over" written in gold cursive. Under the photo, he had written, "No family drama this year, just peace. Hope you found yours too." I smiled, and for the first time in a long time, I meant it. Because revenge is not always about destruction. Sometimes it is about reclamation, reclaiming space, reclaiming peace, reclaiming the version of yourself they tried to convince you did not matter. I looked around my home, my life, myself, and I knew I had not just walked away, I had risen.